Ladies and gentlemen, greetings and welcome to Let's Talk Theory, the show where we analyze some idea and hypothesis around our favorite subjects. I'm your host, Zelrix, and today you can take on your PS2 controllers, your iPod Nanos, and that 2-liter of Pepsi that your parents clearly should have stopped you from drinking all at once, because we're taking a trip down memory lane, back to the early 2000s. Video games were a big part of my childhood. While I was growing up, there were 3 categories of kids who were playing video games. First of all, there were the Nintendo kids who were playing Mario and Zelda. Then there were the kids who were on Xbox and were playing Call of Duty and Halo. And finally, there were kids like me who were playing on PS2, so we had access to Ratchet & Clank, but also the famous Jak and Daxter, my favorite video game of all time. The premise of the game goes as follows. Daxter, Jak's best friend, fell into a pool full of dark Hiko that turned him into this creature called an Odd Soul. To eventually turn him back into his human form, Jak, the main character, must travel to the north to see Gol Acheron, the sage of dark Hiko. Through our journey, we will collect power cells and precursor orbs, but we'll come across 4 different kinds of Hiko: red Hiko, blue Hiko, green Hiko, and yellow Hiko. In this world, Hiko is the energy that shapes pretty much everything, and those 4 Hikos are the 4 main parts. But there is also dark Hiko, which is the most destructive of them all. For this theory, we will have to spoil the 3 main games of the saga, so Jak and Daxter, Jak 2, and Jak 3. I would personally lose sleep if I knew that I was responsible for somebody being spoiled without their consent on the Jak universe. You're warned about spoilers and you're all set about the details of the game. Let's talk theory. So as mentioned, there are 5 types of Hiko and each Hiko is represented by a sage, Gol being the sage of dark Hiko. Although it is never said out loud, the end of the first game does confirm that Gol was indeed the dark sage.
Perhaps we've found another sage now that Gol and Maya are lost.
But fans know that there is a 6th type of Hiko, light Hiko, the fusion of green, blue, yellow, and red Hiko. What is strange is that there is no light sage. The sages never picked anyone to become the light sage. I mean, you can't really blame them because we're led to believe that the sage thought light Hiko was only a legend at the end of the first game. Unless there's one exception. If you remember correctly, Samos did train Jak, but he also came from the future. Maybe Samos knew about light Hiko, and even if he didn't, he knows about the legend. And this is our theory today. Did Samos train Jak to become the light sage? First of all, let's remember how Jak 2 ends. We learned that Jak was indeed born in the future and hidden in the past, so Metal Core, not this one, so Metal Core would not find him. After that, he would be trained and learn how to use his power to eventually defeat the King of Metalheads. In the timeline between the first 2 video games, Hiko became rarer, probably due to the expansion of Heaven City destroying natural resources and the absence of Samos the Green Sage. The Green Sage letting Green Hiko unattended, the balance was broken and the remaining 3 Sage eventually disappeared. Once again, the end of Jak and Daxter, the first game of the saga, does confirm that the sages do train more sages. They are the one finding sages. So it isn't too far-fetched to think that Samos trained Jak to be the light sage. Then let's examine Jak for a second. Sages need to be able to control the power of their respective Hiko. Samos being the green sage, he can send green Hiko blast and master green Hiko. Unfortunately, we never see Jak generate light Hiko out of thin air. But he's the only one in the entire saga that we see canalizing green, red, yellow, and blue Hiko. And light Hiko is a mixture of those 4 types of Hiko. So in a way, we can say that Jak has some predisposition to manipulate this type of energy. But the sages need to be able to generate Hiko, not just canalize it like Jak. And let's examine the sage, shall we? Look at their skin color. The red sage has a red skin, the green sage has green skin, etc. This is something we don't see in Jak when he's canalizing Hiko. Until Jak 2, that said. What if it was just a question of time? Once again, in Jak 2, we can see that Baron Praxis did experiment with dark Hiko on Jak's body. For more than 2 years, Jak was exposed to regular dose of dark Hiko that eventually turned him into Dark Jak. And look at Dark Jak. his skin does change color. Maybe that if the experiment had continued, he would have been stuck with this appearance permanently, just like Samos and the other sages. Plus the same thing basically happens to Gol. Gol was exposed to Dark Hiko for who knows long, and he ended up with the same color as Dark Jax. And don't tell me he was like that before. Samos has trouble recognizing him, and Maya even says that Dark Hiko gave them a beauty beyond his comprehension.
Gol? Is that you?
So we know that their appearance did change with the exposure to Dark Hiko. Then in JAK 3, Light Hiko or White Hiko, depending on which one you prefer, is introduced. I personally think that the transformation to Dark JAK would have been permanent without the Light Hiko, but that's just an idea. But the true question is, what does it mean? What does the effect of Hiko on JAK means for this theory? It means that in his body, Dark Hiko and Light Hiko managed to balance themselves. Samos did train JAK to become the Light Sage, but unfortunately Baron Praxis's experiment did kill any hope he had to become the true Light Sage. He then found Light Hiko, but being corrupted by Dark Hiko, he couldn't become the Sage and became some kind of in-between instead. And now we run into two major problems regarding the consistency of this theory. First of all, if you compare Light Hiko in the first game versus Light Hiko in JAK 3, we can see that they're not the same physically. And second problem, the same goes for Light JAK in JAK and Daxter and Light JAK in JAK 3. Many fans think that because of this change, Light Hiko and White Hiko are not the same. But in my opinion, the truth is a bit more technical. Light Hiko is known as the purest form of Hiko, raw Hiko. And since the end of JAK and Daxter, every fan, me included, thought that to produce Light Hiko, you needed to merge the 4 other types of Hiko. But the truth is, if Light Hiko is the purest form there is, it gave birth to the other form of Hiko, not the opposite. I think that this is the purest form of Hiko, the pure Light Hiko, the stable form that gave birth to the other colors of Hiko. Then you have this form, the more unstable one, the one that regroups the other type. Think of it like a cake. You can mix the ingredient of the cake together and eventually you'll have to put it in the oven to stabilize it and give it shape. Hiko is the same. This form of Light Hiko is a cake before baking and this form of Light Hiko is a cake after baking. But chemically speaking, the two versions of the cake are the same. They are composed of the same ingredients. It's just that one version is more stable than the other and Hiko is the same. We have the first form of Light Hiko, the stable one, and the unstable one that was divided into the 4 colors of Hiko and rebuilt together after. Then there is the issue of JAK's appearance and power while he's canalizing White Hiko through his body. Why do they change? We could say that it is the same explanation as why the drops of White Hiko changes, but I think this is actually the fault of Dark Hiko. Think about it. If Light Hiko is the fusion of all the other Hiko form except Dark Hiko, there is a reason for that. I think Dark Hiko was left out of this mixture because the precursors themselves were corrupted by Dark Hiko becoming the Dark Creator. Perhaps this might be exactly what happened to JAK's power. They were corrupted by Dark Hiko, and we can dig in the lore to find evidence of that. According to the precursors themselves, all Hiko possess a bit of their essence. So for theory's sake, we're going to assume that every power that JAK displays when he's using his light power are powers that the precursor can wield too. It is not too far-fetched to think that, after all, they're the one to grant him with these powers, So, if the Dark Creator did have the same power as Light JAK when they were not corrupted by Dark Hiko, there are bound to be similarities after they were both corrupted. And wouldn't you know it, the Dark Creator can send Dark Hiko Blast, generate electricity, become invisible, and create shields. Granted, some of these powers might just be the result of Dark Hiko, but generating shields is a power that comes with Light Hiko, not Dark Hiko. So why does this creature possess it too? The shield is a result of Dark Hiko and White Hiko entering each other. Light JAK is the result of the mixture. Even the pool of Hiko in JAK 3 is a very strong clue of it. It represents yin and yang. Yin and yang is often depicted as good versus evil. Well, indeed, it is the good within the evil, and the evil within the good. Dark Hiko within Light Hiko, and Light Hiko within Dark Hiko. That plus JAK's power as Dark JAK do change between JAK 2 and JAK 3. I think that most of the powers of the Dark Creator are the powers that JAK would have ended up in without Daxter rescuing him and eventually him finding Light Hiko to put in his body. Unfortunately, due to his corruption with Dark Hiko, I don't think that JAK can one day hope to become the Light Sage. So here's the question, of all people that could have become the Light Sage, why JAK? As a matter of fact, the answer is pretty easy there. JAK was the chosen one, the one that was supposed to beat Metalcore, and he was a descendant of the great warrior Mar, who did fight the Metalheads before and protected the planet for decades. Finally, a big part of JAK and Daxter is to find Blue Hiko to reanimate some old precursor objects. But in the first cutscene of the first game, we see that JAK managed to activate a precursor object without any trace of Blue Hiko around. Perhaps this is the precursor object that reacts to JAK's power, because JAK might have some power within him, some energy to give to the object. And since Light Hiko is composed partly of Blue Hiko, is it that far-fetched to think that Light Hiko could do what Blue Hiko could do? I mean, at the end of the game, we do see that JAK is capable of annihilating the robot with a white Hiko blast, while primarily, the only Hiko that has the power to send blast of destruction was Yellow Hiko. So here's a quick recap. JAK was born in the future and was taken to the past by Samos to train to eventually defeat Metalcore and become the Light Sage. Samos was then joined by the Blue, Red, and Yellow Sage in his quest. Unfortunately, Samos and JAK had to go back to the future too early, and JAK never finished his training and was captured and experimented on by Baron Praxis, killing any hope of becoming the Light Sage. Thanks to Daxter's rescue and his exposure to Light Hiko later on, JAK never became Dark JAK permanently and was saved, but he could not become the Light Sage. Instead, he became some kind of in-between, the master of a new type of Hiko, perhaps Grey Hiko. JAK the Grey Sage. Not only is it super catchy, but it makes perfect sense. Gonna be honest, this part of the theory was proposed to me by a subscriber and I thought that it was a really interesting idea. So thank you Tyrex355 for your participation. So now, what are your theories on the universe of JAK and Daxter, and what is your favorite game in the saga? I, myself, am an OG JAK and Daxter fan, so the first game will always have a special place in my heart as my favorite game, even though I know I'll never have as much fun as I did the first time I played it. I did beat the game a total of 12 times, so, you know, not much mystery left. So if you guys prefer the sequel, it is okay. I love JAK 3, I love JAK 2, even though this game is impossible. And if you love The Lost Frontier, nobody's perfect, what can I say? Then you can subscribe and activate the bell to be notified when a new video comes up. Follow me on Instagram to support my artwork. Share this video with all your friends, and as always, thanks for watching.